Mina Satori, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's a real pleasure to have you here. For those who
Thank
are
you, Bean.
unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
Yeah, thank you for having me, first of all.
Mm.
And so by trade, I am, I guess you would call a life coach, but it's more than that. I am trained as an ontological coach. And ontological, what that means is um, because I coach on the being part of the person. So the study of ontology is how we show up, who we are, dictates the things that we do and what drives us in our day to day and our actions. And so when I coach people, I work on that level, on that deeper level, because there are some subconscious thoughts
Mm.
and paradigms and belief systems that are driving the person. And so, um, I've been doing this for about 17 years now, and it's been such a rewarding profession to do and be able to watch people go through their shifts and changes and create those breakthroughs for themselves.
So, what inspired you to follow this path?
It actually started out with me being a client.
Oh, wow.
I, yeah, I had no idea what a life coach was at that time. I was newly married and was working in the mortgage industry for almost 10 years. And that mortgage crash that happened back in like 2006, 2007 is when it started. Then we went into the recession in 2008. I was lost. I lost my job and I didn't know what to do career wise. And I was trying it on my own to figure things out, and I couldn't. I became very depressed, lost my confidence, very, I was losing opportunities and not being able to even get a job at Starbucks. I mean, it was ridiculous because
Wow.
the job market was flooded at that time.
Did you try to get a job at
And
Starbucks?
oh yeah, there
Oh,
were
wow.
I
Okay.
mean I was applying everywhere.
Okay.
And it was just because of the recession and people had lost so many jobs at that time.
Mm.
And so I went to a seminar, actually. A friend of mine invited me, and we carpooled, went to LA at that time, and met this woman that was putting on this seminar. And she happened to be a life coach, and she offered her services to the audience and a complimentary session. And I took it. I decided, well, I've been doing this on my own, and why don't I see what she can do for me? And from there, it just became history. She helped me on so many levels to overcome my fears, my lack of self confidence. We were looking at career options, and none of them seemed to be a good match for me. And then she suggested, how about coaching
Mm.
as a career? And I thought about it and I saw myself, uh, being good at it, I guess you could say, or just being willing to do this because it fit all of my criteria of wanting to become an entrepreneur and helping people. And so I signed up for the coach training program, and it was a year-long program. After I graduated, I have just been doing this ever since.
I guess now that the term life coach is people understand it a lot more. So, have you seen this evolution of this profession? How has it changed for better, for
Yeah,
worse?
that's a great question. When I first started, it was funny because, first of all, it was the recession.
Mhm.
Not a lot of people had the means to be able to afford my services, even though they really needed it. And I had given hours of sample sessions to people and they wanted it, but it was the challenge of, you know, the times during that time. And then there were a lot of people who didn't even know what life coaching was. And when I would tell them what I do, they'd be like, "What's a life coach?" And then as it evolved, and I've been in this industry, I've also been on stages and worked with a lot of public figures and a lot of thought leaders in this industry, a lot of other very successful coaches. And I've seen the progression where there's more and more widespread awareness around coaching and personal coaching, and which is great for me. And however, I do find that unfortunately, there's a lot of people that can come in and become a coach just by calling themselves a coach And so there's that challenge as well. Who some people who haven't really had the formal training, but I know that there's a lot of very really amazing coaches who have just the skill set. They just have it, and it's just incredible what they can do for people.
So
So
what,
it's just been this transition.
so what exactly is a coach, and how is that term different from, let's say, a teacher or a mentor? And what is a coach exactly? What is coaching?
Yeah, so the true nature of coaching is defined as someone who is a mentor that can help facilitate your growth.
Mm-hmm.
And a coach is not by design supposed to be telling the person what to do.
Mm-hmm.
The coach's job is really to bring out the greatness in the person and empowering them around the decisions that they're making and guiding them on the right path. And so that's really kind of the difference. There's also the therapist too. Therapists look on past based, trauma based, whereas coaches look at what's going on here in the present moment. And then how can we get you to where you want to be? And let's create that plan for you.
Wow, I love that definition. I read an article years ago about the difference between therapy and coaching, and it was I think it was written by a divorcee or a widow actually, and she was talking about these all this emphasis on the past and the cause and labeling, having your identity as being that the problem you've had, and she talked about this group coaching or this group therapy about, I think it was for widows, and everyone was identifying as a widow even 20 years after the event. And then she went to do coaching, and it was just like 3 sessions, and it was all really solution based rather than just focusing on the cause.
100%.
Yeah.
Exactly. Coaching also does not necessarily label or identify a person because it can pigeonhole a person, just like you're sharing. They've
Mm,
identified themselves as a widow for 20 years.
mm,
And what if it's not that? What if they can just see what else is possible by stepping outside of that identity to see what else they can be?
mm,
And so that's where coaching is different too.
mm. So what makes a good coach?
Mm.
What should people be looking for?
That's a great question. So I follow what ICF puts out. It's core competencies. There's 8 of them.
Hmm.
ICF stands for International Coaching Federation. It's a global organization with members all over the world. And we follow this model, which includes active listening, creating a safe space. Trust and safety is really important. We also have ethical guidelines that we follow. Um, and, really cheering on the person's growth, like, acknowledging their growth and being able to identify where they want to focus on. Because again, this is not our agenda, it
Hmm.
is the client's agenda. So if they come to me and they say, well, I'm really having trouble with my relationship, but I'm here because I want to work on my career. And then, you know, the coach's job is to ask, well, which one do you want to focus on first? Do you want to work on your relationship or do you want to work on your career? Leaving it up to the client to decide what they want to focus on first. So I think that that is a real key difference here as far as what could make a good coach,
Hmm.
um, to provide the space, a container that's safe for the client to be able to process what they want to work on and where their challenges are, and then receive that guidance.
Hmm. I have a friend who's a coach, and he told me that I'm not sure about this feature, but he said that on Zoom there is a feature where you can see who spoke the most, and he said that he wants to make sure his calls are like him speaking less than 20%, and so the client is speaking more. Is that true, or is that how it should be?
I have a similar thought around that. Yeah. I think that, yeah, the coaches probably would be better to let the client speak more than the
Hmm.
coach. And a real big key difference, I think, is asking more questions.
Mm. And do you get
not
training about
telling.
what kind of questions to ask, like to get the juice? Do you get trained in that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned from my mentors. I've had some
Mm,
wonderful coaches that, with the training that I had, it was a year-long training, and there were 15 of us. And we also had the equal amount of coaches and mentors in the room.
mm.
And then there was a couple lead coaches that would be leading. And we were all, for an entire year, witnessing each other being coached by
Mm.
the coaches around the room. And so we would get little ideas and we're like, oh, that's a brilliant question. Like we'll be
Okay.
making notes and writing some of these down. But I think it all comes down to our intuition, like really just being fully present. That's the one of the other core competencies is to just be really fully present with the client and really hearing what they're sharing and even between the words of what they're not sharing so that you can ask the right questions.
Wow. I've seen a lot of stuff on your website focusing on female entrepreneurs. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's been a true pleasure of mine, a labor of love these past couple of years. I've shifted. I mean, I've coached people from all walks of life, from stay-at-home moms to artists to CEOs and executives. And the last couple of years, I've been working on this project, pouring in a lot of love into what I call female empowerment. And it all started from a couple of years ago when I was doing some research and I found this report, this global study called the GEM report. And believe it or not, they've been doing it every year for a while now, where they look at women in business and they do a worldwide study to identify the stats on how many women are moving into entrepreneurship, how many women have businesses versus men, how many of them are educated, how many of them are have families. It's a really great study. And they've also identified some of the main things that women are challenged with.
Mm.
So, for example, they are not having the right support, or they don't own their accomplishments. And, one of the biggest reasons why they go into business is because they want to create wealth for themselves and their families and also make a big difference. And so when I read this study, I got inspired to create a program specifically for women entrepreneurs to address these challenges that they're having and create a community for them because that's also one of the others, the support, the community that they're lacking, and just bringing it all together to support them in the best way I can.
So, what do you think the biggest challenge in terms of finances is for women? I think there's so many things at play. What's your experience or about female money mindset and how can we
Yeah,
overcome those blocks? What are the blocks and why do we have them?
great question. Yeah, there are some differences between men and women and the way we've been taught. It comes back to how we were raised. In the traditional world, women were mostly the home caregiver and housewife, and then we went through that whole industrial revolution, and women started going into the workforce, and so I think that there's a lot of women that have not really learned how to budget or keep manage their finances. There's a lot of things that they have the roadblocks, and then of course the fears. And one of the biggest ones is women that I'm finding is that women have trouble like negotiating their own salaries, for
Mm,
example.
absolutely.
And you'll see this across the board, with the differences with how much men earn and women earn. And men have no problem with negotiating their salaries and asking for more. But for some reason, women tend to hold back. And I think it comes back to their confidence and again, owning their accomplishments, knowing their worth and their value and how much they're contributing. And if they don't want to acknowledge or if they're afraid to because they think that it's boasting or whatever, those are just those fears, those underlying thoughts that can kind of get in the way.
What about the women who are, let's say, in a relationship where they do have a strong provider, so their incentive to work is not really as financial as other women? I mean, do you think that I've seen a lot of that happen around me where women are trying to build something, but they don't have that urgency because it's more like a vanity project, and it doesn't really, I think sometimes you need a bit of a need or a push or something to actually make something happen. I mean, have you seen that a lot?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If a woman has everything she needs and, she's being provided for, then, you know, it would just come down to the why. I would ask the person to really go deep and ask them, why would they want to do this? Why would they want to be, let's say, earning a lot of money and creating wealth for themselves? Could it be because they're really passionate? It comes down to, are they passionate about maybe bringing education to children, or, bringing clean water, or whatever it is, or even if it's as simple as just helping other people, just being of service. Maybe it could be even in finances. Somebody I know, a woman, she is, a CPA tax accountant, and she also sells life insurance. And she's doing really well for herself because she's wanting that personal empowerment around money. And it could just be as simple as that, just saying, I want to be able to have my own money, to have the power to do whatever, to purchase this item, or give it to charity. And I think it just really comes down to that person and really what the drive is underneath it.
I'm trying to I have a lot of friends who are still looking for a provider, and I'm trying to convince them to have their own money. It's a big kind of debate among women, I think, especially let's say in the context of, let's say, feminism, equal pay, and then you get into the world of dating where women are still expecting men to pay. So it's very lots of gray lines around money.
Yeah, yeah. I think yet again, it comes from that period of time. It's just been ingrained or passed down to us, from generations before, because women generally did not have to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, then you go into, like, I think it was like in the 60s or 70s when, women really wanted to go into the workforce on their own and have their careers and maybe even not have families. They want to just be career focused. But yes, then you still have those, in some places where they're wanting to be provided for, they're looking for that, man to help provide for them, but at the same time, not realizing how powerful they can be with what they can do themselves. And
Definitely.
yeah,
We said earlier about wages. I think the same about pricing, especially as a coach or a freelancer, like how we price and the link between pricing and self-worth. Uh, have you have any techniques about how to tap into that, or the link between self-love, self-worth, and money and pricing?
yeah, I think the first part is to just get over your fear of
Mm.
asking for more.
Okay.
And that can be that first step that can be really challenging at first when you're, wanting to not ask too much or charge too much for whatever reason, stretching yourself and maybe challenging yourself to increase your rates, maybe just by maybe 500 or whatever it is, that's you decide. And
Mm.
then you want to just not be afraid and get used to that as your new rate. Um, John Assaraf, I want to mention, is one of the greatest that he talks about this. He talks about it as the analogy of like a thermostat in the room
Mm.
where you're comfortable. You put your thermostat, let's say at 70, 71, but if you raise it to 75, 78, you're going to start feeling it. You're going to start feeling uncomfortable. And but eventually you're going to start getting used to, or you're going to get acclimated to that new temperature.
Mm.
And so it's no different with money too. The
Mm.
other great technique is to put some money into your wallet more than what you normally do. If, let's say you carry, a $20 bill
Mm.
around all the time, and then you go and put a $100 bill in there, and you start beginning to feel uncomfortable. And what do? A person wants to go and quickly spend that money. They want to go break it
Mhm.
and bring it back down to 20.
Uh-huh.
And so awareness is the other big piece of it, and just really being aware when this happens and seeing, like, okay, where am I uncomfortable? Where's my uncomfortableness? And then how can I move and shift towards what I really want, which is going to be, earning more income and raising my rates and things like that, and just getting yourself used to it because our comfort zone loves to keep us in that space because we know what to expect. We expect something from it. And when we go outside our comfort zone, we get uncomfortable because we don't know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the fears that people have it's just simply not knowing what it's like to live in this other world.
Mm, the comfort level. Yeah.
Mhm.
Any
Yeah.
other major blocks that you've noticed with women, with your clients?
Confidence is one
Oh,
that
yeah.
comes up a lot
Mm.
for me. Yeah, that I see. Yeah.
Confidence in their
Knowing that they can
knowledge.
do it.
Mm.
I'm sorry.
Confidence in their knowledge.
Confidence in their knowledge and their abilities
Yeah.
and being afraid of making mistakes.
Mm.
Not trying something new because they're afraid they're going to fail. And, you know, I think it comes down to just the way that they see and view the world and how that relates to them.
So what techniques do you use to actually
Oh,
to kind of have this create a
to
new mindset? Mm.
yeah, that's a great question. In relation to confidence, well,
Yeah,
if
or
we,
any money, and money would be interesting as
Mhm.
well. Yeah.
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 Well, so again, it's challenging the person to really ask them, is this really important for you to not live in this place?
Mm.
If they see that they become aware around it just comes down to awareness. Where they are is not working
Mm.
and they want to change it.
Mm.
So, how do you change it? Well, you start by first having the awareness around it. Because a lot of times, the things that we do on a day to day basis are on a subconscious level. So, like, for example, when you first started learning how to tie your shoelace as a child, you're really present and focused on making sure you turn the loops and you tie it, right?
Mm.
And you stay present until you begin to learn how to do it so many times that it just becomes natural and you're not even thinking about it. You could be talking and you can be looking elsewhere while you're tying your shoes because what happens is that goes into the subconscious
Mm.
and our day-to-day habits, no matter in what area, whether it's looking at money, looking at our career, looking at our health, looking at our relationships, we do things automatically. And it's part of our way of being that we don't even recognize we're doing it. And so the first part of this process of creating the true shifts and transformation is to just bring it to the surface and be aware of when it's happening.
Mm.
And when you do, then the next part of this process that's really important is to shift into a new way of being, a new process that you want to create. So I have my clients think about, well, what would that instead of you doing this, because now that you're aware and you're present to what you're doing that isn't serving you, what would you like to do instead? How would you like to show up instead? So let's take the confidence, for example, confidence and relate it to money. Like,
Mm.
I'm afraid I'm going to get rejected if I raise my rates, or I'm not going to get any clients. Well, what's that underneath that? What is that context? It's most likely lack
Mm.
or scarcity, right? Being afraid to raise their rates because they feel that they're not able to maybe serve the client or serve the customer, um, and because they're afraid that they're going to get rejected. There's a lot of reasons. And so if we were to take that and as an example and say, okay, instead of you thinking of it this way, how else can you look at it? Well, I know what I'm doing. This is the client. I'm going to speak for the client. Client will say, and I had this one happen just recently, actually. We're talking about raising her rates.
Mm.
And she's a marketing specialist and she does a wonderful job to her clients. However, she's undercharging.
Mm.
And I brought up the conversation with her. I'm like, what are your thoughts about raising your rate? And she's like, oh gosh, I'm afraid I'm going to lose this client. I said, oh, well, where's this coming from? So then we dove in a little deeper and dug in a little deeper. And it came down to her not realizing and recognizing, owning her own value and the quality of work that she does, because she does such great work, but she's not owning it. And so we're talking about raising the rates and bring it at least to market rate, right?
Okay.
Or even maybe even just a little bit below that, where she feels that it's a stretch, but it's also bringing her outside of her comfort zone. So she's outside of her comfort zone. Yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but it's also going to be, a reward for her to see how capable she is, right? Coming back to building her confidence in the work that she does. And so you take a look at this and then you really want to just take the first step, take action anywhere. It doesn't matter what, if somebody has struggled and they want to get out of this habit, just take any step. No matter what it is, you're going to learn from it. Because people think that, oh, I'm going to make a mistake, I'm going to stumble. That's okay. This is where you practice. Just like every athlete, how do they get good at something? Is because they practice. So you got to practice doing something new until you find something that works. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. When I'm thinking about that, because as a freelancer myself, I just think it's easier to raise the prices for the new clients. Do you know what I mean? So you kind of maintain the ones without, because I'm afraid of confrontation. Maybe that's a very female thing as well. So I'd rather
Yeah.
have that uncomfortable conversation of, hey, you're someone who's actually, a big chunk of your income to say, actually, I want more. It's a big bit of a risk as well. So I think I would just have raise the prices for the new clients. I kind of do that. It seems easier. Mm,
I think, yeah, whatever works and raising the rates
mm,
for the new client is a really great one.
mm,
Um, in her case, this is her main work and she's
mm.
giving 30 hours of her week to
Okay.
this one client.
Mm,
And so it wouldn't be an option to bring in another client for her at this time
okay.
or even hire a team because
Mm,
we talked about that as well. So it's kind of like this catch 22. She doesn't earn enough to be able to hire another VA or a helper.
mm,
And so she's stuck with this 30 hours a week that she's getting underpaid and she can't grow from there. So it's either going to have to be asking this client to raise the rates with them or maybe find a new client, perhaps.
mm.
And again, working with her, I'm literally working with her at this moment as we speak, and we're still not there yet to be able to maybe perhaps look at some other options. But yes, starting with a new client is always going to be easy. Now, if it's going to be an existing client, the way I see it is you just have to be good at justifying the increase in the rate,
Mm,
right? So pointing out to the client what are all the selling points, what are all the great things that you're doing for them, and then having that conversation on what is it worth for them. Where do they see that this is worth?
do you have any
Most often they're going to say it's really great and it's going to
mm,
be worth a lot of money.
mm.
So then when they say that, it becomes a little easier.
I think the mindset of coaching or being a client of coaching is like understanding that whatever you're paying is actually investing in yourself. You're not giving that money to another person. It's actually an investment in yourself.
Oh, yeah. It's always going to be coming down to the client and investing in themselves. What are the benefits for them?
Mm.
Hmm.
Have you got any
Absolutely.
amazing stories? Like, what's the most impressive or transformation that you've witnessed,
Oh, there
or
has
the
been
most
quite a lot.
satisfying kind of?
Most
Yeah.
satisfying.
Yeah.
Oh, great question. Yeah, there was one lady that I remember, hardworking, career woman. She, has a family and she gave herself a lot to her family, being of service to her family. And there was a tremendous amount of guilt that she had when she came to me. She struggled with not putting as much time into herself. And she was uh, kind of, I guess you can call it the common people pleaser behaviors of, always doing things more, stretching over and beyond for other people, but not giving that same attention to herself. So her cup was not full, and she started being very resentful around it. And so we had, you know, some sessions there where we had those conversations and really taking a look at her mindset around how she sees herself. And, you know, then after having those sessions, she had this major breakthrough where she felt more empowered over her current situation, where she was able to change that perspective and see that she can be there for her family, be there for her loved ones, and also not feel guilty by saying no and not overextending herself and giving herself some of that attention and love as well.
Did she learn to say no and grow?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
very much. And when we ended the coaching, she was at a place where she felt a lot of peace and she was just really much happier. You know, she was able to actually be free to say no at times and be okay with,
Mm.
you know, with it. I think that's a real big one for a lot of women is we tend to be more of service and giving, and we want to not disappoint anybody. Um, and even the confrontation, you know, we don't we don't want somebody to get upset when we say no.
I've been learning
Yeah.
that this weekend. I organize events and dinner events in vegan restaurants, and I always say no plus ones because I want to know who's coming. You know, it's really important to have people's names, and if someone doesn't pay, you need to kind of identify who that person is. You know, it's very important.
Mhm.
And I also don't allow dogs, so I just don't want to have dogs in the restaurant. Anyway, someone came wanted with plus ones, and I said no. And then someone came with a dog and I turned them away. And I felt like everyone was like, "Ugh." But I just learned a very valuable lesson from that. Like if you have this kind of bigger goal, then you've got to just live with people, you know, not liking your decisions and just, you know, because no brings clarity, I guess, having these boundaries in place. Mm,
Absolutely. Yeah,
mm,
that's a great example. Yeah, people are
yeah.
going to be upset, but you know, you have those boundaries for a
Mm,
reason.
yeah.
And you did. You wanted to make sure that there was no plus one and no dogs. And
I feel really
I
proud of myself actually because I've got this little book that I've been using this little diary this year and I write 3 wins a day in it. And that was
oh,
one
I
of my
love it.
wins for Saturday, like leadership. Because I don't feel like a
Yes.
leader at all. I'm actually really proud of myself for being a bear. You know, it's like the people are
Yes.
probably, you know, not happy with me, but I think that's really important. I was talking to someone as well I go to a private members club, a guy who's pretty much self-made. He's quite young and he started with this AI project and now he's got 50 employees. I mean, it's just really incredible. And he's had to kind of, you know, all these little problems with employees, had like go to HR, you know, just outsourcing the problem and just kind of getting on with the bigger mission of the
Wow,
company
that's great.
because you can't really be, you know, thinking about those things, you know, not being liked. You have to get over that's a big thing, you know. Yeah.
What I love about that example is that he knows and understands where to hand it off to somebody else. And
Yeah.
I think that for us women, we always want to be a part of it or feel the need to have to do it all and
Mm,
saying, you know, no and giving yourself that win to say, hey, I know my limits and I'm going to give this to somebody else. And it honestly, you're never going to have everybody like you.
mm,
I always look at it this way. Which would you rather have? Would you like to be liked or respected?
mm-hmm,
It's either one. And I think when it comes down to business, and especially with employees or colleagues, coworkers, whatever it is, you really want to be respected. I personally think. I don't care if somebody doesn't like me.
mm,
Um, I respect people. And so there's a difference. You can like somebody or you can just respect somebody. There's a difference there. And so when somebody respects you, you make that decision and you move on. Doesn't mean necessarily that they have to like you as a person,
mm,
right? And even in coaching with my clients too, I don't care if my clients don't like me. Like I'm going to push them and I'm going to challenge them. And I will ask those confronting questions, but in a loving way. Like I've had one time, let me tell you this, I had a client hang up on me one time
Oh, wow.
because he was so frustrated because I would not let him get away with it. And I
Is that the
I
end of
thought
the
for sure
relationship then, or did he come? No.
I thought for sure that I wouldn't hear back from him.
Oh, well.
About an hour later, he calls me back
Mm-hmm.
and he goes, you know, what you did, I I respect that. You didn't let me get away with it. And I see what you're talking about now. And
Mm.
like, so it gave him a little space and time. Like, but I swear I thought that he was just going to fire me on the spot because I was, I kept questioning, what he was saying. And yeah. And so, that part right there for me, I was okay if he didn't come back because
Mm.
I knew that I spoke up and I asked him those questions in order for him to see for himself where he's, uh, you know, fallen into some kind of way of thinking that doesn't serve him, right? And so it's just a matter of like looking at it in that way. And women are so, see, that's the difference too. Men don't really care if they're liked, like especially in the job place. They just want the respect more than anything. And if they're gonna fire somebody, they don't take it personally like
Mm.
women do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really important. Like a business decision is not like a personal decision a lot of the times.
Exactly.
Mm. Yeah. Do you have any tips for people who want to become coaches? I mean, I really would love, I've done a few coaching things through my website that my followers have asked me for. And I was thinking, what do I do? Do I do mentorship or do I do coaching? Because so I've got this thing on my website called Let's Talk. And I offer a series of topics that I can talk about. So let's say if someone wants to open, let's say an erotic shop in Spain, this is my main business. So I kind of know all of that business model of the industry and how to tell people about marketing with all the censorship, and I have all that inputs. That's more like a mentor.
Yeah.
But then other people are just want to offload some of their traumas or learn about like female pleasure. So that's kind of a bit more. I'm not going to be a therapist, but I've kind of guided a lot of women to
Mhm.
own their pleasure a bit more. So I have these different kind of depending on the topic. I kind of
Yeah.
change my modality. But I'm thinking of I actually created this new modality called holistic self love with the 8 pillars of self love,
That's
and
beautiful.
and I'm kind of practicing it now with a lot of different people. It's going to be a retreat. So part of me is thinking like, what the next steps that say someone like me could take? Because I don't really see what I'm doing to be on a certain program for a certain certification, but I do believe you do need to have something. So, because I think the world of
Hmm.
coaching is just so big, and there's no kind of one specific route unless you're kind of you're sure about what the modality or the topic you're doing, and you can kind of get certified on someone's.
Yeah. I think it just comes down to, looking into some of these coach training programs and seeing the different modalities that people
Mm.
have and maybe perhaps going there, looking at that. ICF is a wonderful organization. You can start there. They uh, have a directory of accredited schools
Okay.
um, for training to become a coach. And that's where I went. I went to one of the training schools in San Diego called Accomplishment Coaching. And their modality, again, is ontological based.
So you can
But
apply that to
there's,
any topic then once you got
you
that.
can,
Okay, that's interesting.
absolutely. Yeah,
Mm.
my training is, it covers, I can coach in all areas,
Mm.
whether it's work, relationships, personal health, because of the tools that they gave. You can basically use and apply them in any area.
Mm.
And so there's a lot of different modalities that are really great out there. Now, as far as you creating your programs, I love what you're thinking about. And I think it's just going to be a great thing that you can add as far as like maybe coming up with what that criteria is going to look like and what the end result is that you want people to have.
Mm.
Maybe creating one for the business mentoring, and then another one for the personal, for the women,
Mm.
coaching them. on those areas that they're struggled with. And I think those would be really great.
Yeah.
So you could definitely, I mean, honestly, you could just start now if you want
Mhm.
to. You know, you just have to have an idea
Mm.
and put it out there and see who is interested. I always like to, when I first start out, like for this women's, I call it the Thriving Female Entrepreneur, this women's masterclass series. I put it out there in November, December. It was a 6 week masterclass. And I had different topics every week that we would go over. And the
Mm.
women that were part of this group, I did a survey at the end to kind of get a feel of which topics they resonated with the most. And so you want to do, something where, let's say you do like a beta run. This was like a soft launch for me, until I do the bigger launch, because this can help me to fine tune it. Once I get the feedback after the participants submit their survey, I will know, okay, this resonated most and this one didn't. And then you can tweak it as you go.
Mm.
So just putting something out there, maybe gathering a group of people if you want to, bring some of your close contacts and people that you know into this group and then, you know, create it and make it like a beta test and see what resonates. And then you can fine tune it. So I think the best way to do it is to just put it out there and see how people respond to it.
Yeah, I've been doing it kind of one on one because it seems to be kind of quite personal. You know, this the self love thing about people talking about boundaries and self compassion. So it gets very personal. So I've just been doing it one on one for now. But then I did one yesterday actually. I've been doing it with as exchanges. Like I have a friend who's a masseur, so I had a massage for the self love coaching. So I'm kind of like
Nice.
trading it right now with other like Reiki healers and things like that. It's kind of
Oh,
cool.
that's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
trading is a great thing to do
Mm.
too, for sure. I've done that as well. And funny you say massage because I have a really good friend that's also a massage therapist, and we traded.
Oh, God. Yeah, he came yesterday and said, what do we do first? I was like, we're doing the coaching first because I want to chill after, you can't be.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
exactly. No, we alternate every other week or whatever, we try to spread it out. But I think that's a great way to do it. And you can also just get feedback from her as well,
Mm,
from your friend and just see, okay, what resonated, in this coaching experience,
mm. Because
right?
what I've
And
thought about
just,
now, because it's like a 2 hour thing, but I thought now that maybe because it's 8 pillars of an 8 week thing, because I just think it's so, you can go so into depth with like self-compassion or self-care or
yeah.
self-pleasure. I mean, each topic is just vast, especially for women who are putting everyone else first, as we mentioned earlier. So this is
I
like
think you're
really
bringing
important.
great topics into this.
Mm,
Yeah, self-love, self-compassion,
mm,
all of these things are going to be so valuable for women. I could see
mm,
that they're going to get a lot out of this. And so you just, you're going to be bringing some great things that you're going to go deeper with them. And if it is
mm,
one-on-one, that you could still get the feedback is what I'm saying. You could still create something like this as putting it out there to see how the women resonate with these topics and which ones they really like the most and all of that. Yeah, getting good feedback like this is so good. You can definitely keep advancing like this.
yeah. A couple of questions I ask all of my guests. What is the book that changed your life?
Oh, I would have to lean on, there's so many. I'm such a bookworm.
Oh,
I
me
have a lot
too.
of books. The one that really, I think the one that changed my life the most was Getting Real by Susan Campbell.
Mm,
That one is about relationships and
mm,
how you can, have those hard conversations in relationships. And I never, I never was brought up in an environment with my family knowing how to talk to each other.
mm,
There was actually a lot of verbal and physical abuse, people screaming.
mm,
So, um, there was no like actual tools, I guess you
mm,
could say, to learn how to communicate effectively. And so that book to me was really valuable because I was able to actually share and today we call it the nonviolent communication.
Oh
It's kind
yeah, I
of on
love
the
that.
similar,
Mm,
yeah, kind of similar in that way where you're speaking from your truth, you're speaking from, how it's making you feel, how it impacts you with taking responsibility for your side on that.
mm,
Without putting blame on the other person and really having the conversation so that it's an open communication with each other to be able to come to a resolution.
mm. I think it's fascinating all these different frameworks with relationships. You have to be with someone who is open to that as well, who wants to grow and who wants to find peace and not get
Yeah.
into defensive mode. It's very difficult. It's not always the case where both, if you're both on that same page, then conflict is not something to fear, you know.
That helps. Yeah, it
Mm,
helps when both people are on the same page together. Like I
mm,
recommend this book. It's been in publication for a while, but it
mm,
has such good information that I'm still referring it out. And I always let them know. I say, I think it would be good for both of you. Like when it's in a relationship, I
mm,
say, I think it would be beneficial for both of you to read this book together and work on
mm.
these things because it gives some really great insights and some tools on new ways of talking.
What about any kind of business books or kind of personal development?
Yeah. So, oh gosh, let me look back here.
I'm a massive bookworm. Actually, I just love reading so much.
I know, I
Is there
know.
anything you've read a few times, like more than once?
Of course, yeah, of course, Think and Grow Rich is always
Oh my
a
God,
really
yes,
good
that's the
one.
one that's changed my life. Yeah.
This one is such a classic. If
Yeah.
anybody has not read this yet, you got to read it, and you got to
I'm
read it
curious to know where
more than
you've got
once.
the post-it on which page, because
Oh, let me look. Let me look.
there's so
See
many
what we
nuggets
got.
in that book. I'm reading it for the fourth time now.
Okay, it says brain as broadcasting and receiving station. Okay, the
Oh.
wording too, you got to realize that this guy is from the 1920s. Okay,
Mm,
so here's what I highlighted. If you like, I can read this one quick paragraph. The subconscious mind is the sending station of the brain through which vibrations of thought are broadcast. The creative imagination is the receiving set through which the vibrations of thought are picked up from the ether.
mm, love it.
Yeah. So a little bit further, it says operation of your mental broadcasting station is a comparatively simple procedure. You have but three principles to bear in mind and to apply when you wish to use your broadcasting station: the subconscious mind, creative imagination, and autosuggestion. So he recommends to use all three of those. The stimuli through which you put these three principles into action have been described, and the procedure begins with desire.
I love it because I'm actually I read that in 2019 for the first time. It changed my whole life, especially the chapter on sexual transmutation, which is just mind blowing. And I've done with a couple of friends 2 years ago with a friend. We did the workbook. There's a workbook you can find on Amazon, and we used to
Oh,
meet
yeah.
every Friday and then just do the exercises together. But having read, the chapter before, and then now with another friend, I'm reading it again 2 years later, and we're going to five-star hotels and doing one chapter at a time.
I love it.
We've just done two chapters so far. So we did desire and faith. Next one's also suggestions. I'm a big fan of subconscious reprogramming, journaling, and affirmations. I'm a
Hmm.
meditation affirmations person, so
Me too.
I just
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, especially that
Yeah.
repetition.
Subconscious. Yes, 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 yes.
Mm,
And see, that's the key is to the repetition. And you
mm,
just keep doing that, the subconscious. And there's, the theta, where,
mm.
beta, theta, alpha,
Yeah.
and where most of the information that's absorbed is in the theta stage when we're just about to fall asleep and when we are just waking up. And
Mm,
so, we have the power to be able to make those suggestions into our minds. And I guess this is kind of going back to this broadcasting and receiving, right? And
mm.
when you can do that. I'm curious, have you heard of um, The Art of Everyday Ecstasy? This is another book that I was wondering it might resonate with you because you're really into the orgasmic life. And it talks about those seven principles which are tied to the chakras
Is it
and
Margot
how,
Anand?
yes.
Yeah, I've read the other one, the Art of Sexual Magic, but I know the one you say is more popular. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really great one too, because you can live that every day, and
Yeah.
bringing that and harnessing your sexual energy into your day to day through like being passionate about something and
Mm.
bringing that fire energy into whatever it is that you're creating.
Mm.
I just was wondering I was just curious if
Oh,
you knew
I'm gonna
about.
put it on my list now because that's always a sign. But I know of Margot Anand, and I read her other book. But in it, Napoleon Hill talks about sexual energy being your magnetism, your charisma, your handshake, your public
Yes.
speaking. The way you
Yes.
dress, all of that. So that's what really fascinated me because I've been in the sexual wellness space for a long time. And I was always focused on female empowerment because that can be very powerful when you are connected to your body, the way you walk, the
Yeah.
relationship choices you make. But this Think and Grow Rich took it to a whole new level. It's like there's a power, like how we use this, how we can harness this energy for other things. And it's not talking about an actual sexual expression, but sexual transmutation is there's no sexual expression. It's just literally guiding your thoughts towards a different action.
Yes.
So that's super
Isn't that
powerful.
great? It is
Yeah.
really powerful, isn't it? I
Yeah.
know. I love that Napoleon brought that into
Mm.
his teachings and made that to be equally important to everything else.
It's
That
often
that part of it.
ignored, and it's probably most powerful part of humanity. It's like why we're all here, and even like
Mhm.
advertising. It's all sex sells, but sex sells everything except for sexual objects like condoms or lubricants. But it can sell a perfume, it can sell a car. This kind of feeling of
Yes.
sex appeal. Yeah, it's really really
Isn't it?
powerful.
I think what there's a cross between beauty and power, both of
Mm,
those coming together, I think is where you find that
mm.
um, pinnacle, right? And there's just like this bringing those two together can be
Mm.
super powerful.
Yeah, and the fact that we're all kind of thirsty in that sense makes it even more powerful. It's like yearning. It's like not quite in reach, within our reach. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah.
really powerful.
Hungry, being hungry, I like to call
Yeah.
it too. But yeah, thirsty, hungry,
Mm.
for sure.
And in that faith chapter, actually, it was really interesting. Actually, revisiting that, it talks about sexual, like love, sex, and something else. I can't remember. But it was just really interesting because it was alluding to things like visualization and for positive thinking. And this was very new. All these concepts were so new when it was published. Whereas these days we have all these terms that are quite well known. Um,
Right.
it must have been so
Isn't it great?
revolutionary.
We have come a long way. We've
Mm,
come very far when you think about how, especially women, we've been repressed for so long. And then now coming into this era where we are now more accepting of our feminine energy
mm,
and our power that we hold, that's just become such a great level for us to be really owning and empowering ourselves
mm,
with. I think it's
mm.
great.
Definitely. I love that kind of blend of the independent woman, but with also embracing that femininity as well. Yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah. A woman can be feminine and a leader at the same
Mm.
time, you
Definitely. That's a
know?
great quote.
Yeah.
What's the quote that you live by? Do you have a affirmation or a quote that you live by?
Oh, I love Wayne Dyer.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I was lucky to be in his presence, and you want to know, he just had so much joy and light. I couldn't believe it. It was so funny. So here's the quote that I really love, and I actually have it here sitting on my little altar. I read it every day. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change.
That reminds me of his that kind of documentary or kind of series or film that he was in, The Shift, because it wasn't a
Yes,
shift in circumstance, it was a shift in perception where everyone's life changed
yes.
during that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Mm,
Isn't that great? He started in what was it, like PBS shows or something,
mm,
and then he started working with like Louise Hay and um, speaking on stage and wonderful. I always refer back to him. I'm always listening to him because he's got such great wisdom there.
definitely.
But yeah, he lives it. He embodies it. Well, he's gone now, but
Yeah.
yeah, he really was a true light in this world.
Definitely. So where can people find you?
Oh, thank you for asking. People can just find me on my website if they want to have, more of an understanding of what I do and who I am. And they can go to minasatori.com,
Mm,
M like Mary, INA, SATORI.com. And all the information is there. They can also follow me on Instagram as well at Coach Mina Satori. And I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn. Anywhere, you can search my name and it'll pop up.
muy bien. We'll be tagging you
Mhm.
as well. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Orgasmic Lifestyle. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Venus. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you. And thank you for having me. It was a great time. And yeah, really enjoyed this.
Thank you.